So Reagan and I were working together at a digital marketing startup back in 2015, and I always had an interest in wristwatches and men's fashion. At that time, I'd owned a Seiko, I'd owned a few G-Shocks, and I was surfing before work pretty often. And when you surf before work, you need a wristwatch because you need to know what time it is, to know when to get out of the water to make it to work in time. And so I started to shop for a new wristwatch. I was fresh out of college, so my price point was $100 to $200. And I wanted something that was durable enough to go surfing, to go in the water daily and not be damaged, but also looked good enough that I could continue to wear that same watch right into the office. And so I was looking online, trying to find something that met my needs, and honestly, I couldn't. Most of the watches from $100 to $200 that are durable or surf watches, they're often rubberized, they're bulky, they're big, they don't really look that good. And the watches in the $100 to $200 price point that do look good, they're honestly pretty junky. They're made from poor quality components. They don't have the durability aspect, and they're not really made to last. And so from that, I saw a great opportunity to potentially build a watch for $100 to $200 retail, and that combined aesthetics and durability. And so I went straight online and spent a ton of time researching, seeing if I could find a manufacturer that could produce components or where we could build a watch that would fuse those two concepts and meet our needs. Fortunately, my research yielded pretty good results. I found out it was very, very possible, and I was incredibly excited for the idea. And so at that time, as I said, I was working with Reagan at our startup, and I knew Reagan was a really talented designer, really talented marketer. And so I brought the idea to him. I pitched him the concept, and he was also really excited about it. He thought it was a great idea, and we partnered pretty much immediately. And at that point, I was excited because it really went from concept to something more real. I had a partner, and we were working on it together. So that was in late 2015, and Reagan and I spent almost all of 2016 working on building the brand, working on building out the concept, choosing the name. Choosing the name was a whole ordeal and a whole effort in itself. And in the end of 2016, we were able to produce our first production run of watches after a ton of sampling and a ton of testing. Our friends and family were amazing. They helped sell out that first production run, and we took that money and put it straight into a larger production run. And that propelled us into 2017 when we started sales to the public. I would definitely say the biggest challenge in the early days was with manufacturing. Reagan and I had really high standards for quality of the watches. We wanted a watch that would be able to stand up to surfing, to ocean, to saltwater on a daily basis. It's pretty easy to make a watch that looks great aesthetically at an affordable price. It's not easy to make a watch that looks great aesthetically, is affordable, and is also durable. And so we had conversations going with these overseas manufacturers, and it was a consistent challenge to get them to use better quality components. Over and over and over again, they would pitch these lower quality components for cost savings, and we had to explain again and again. It was like pulling teeth trying to get them to use the better quality components, to explain that we're okay spending a bit more to get a watch that's going to perform better. And so Reagan and I spent late 2015 into pretty much all of 2016 trying to design, to sample, and to work with different manufacturers. And more than once we'd spend 3 months working with a manufacturer, designing, sharing colors, sharing specifications, all of these things. We'd finally get the watch after 3 months of work. We'd go straight to the ocean because that's the most important test, and the watch would flood. And it was heartbreaking each time to put so much time and energy into something and then have it simply fail. Fortunately though, each of those failures was a huge learning opportunity for us. So when the watch would fail, we'd go back to the drawing board and we'd spend that much more time trying to understand and learn about gaskets, case structure, screw-down crowns was a huge part in, initially our watches didn't have a screw-down crown, and adding a screw-down crown to the design was a huge step. We're also lucky to have a couple friends who are industry experts, so we brought the watches to them. They reviewed the cases and gave recommendations on improvements that we could make. And over time, we were able to get better and better samples. There was a point in mid 2016 when we had a watch that seemed almost good enough, and Reagan and I, we were like, do we need to just go to market? Should we just accept it as is? And it was really, really great that we didn't do that. We could have launched with a watch that was almost good enough, but instead we took the time to iterate a couple more times and make the watch completely up to spec and completely ready to be proud of a watch that we could share with our family and our friends and the public. So that first year of manufacturing definitely had the most frustration, the most difficulty, but it ultimately yielded a watch that we were proud of, and the beginning of Vaer. In 2017, we publicly launched the brand. We had a release party, the website was out there. We were really excited. We were kind of riding the high of selling the friends and family batch, and we were expecting sales to start coming in, and they just didn't. It's kind of funny looking back, having that expectation that just having a website out there is going to drive sales. But ultimately, we learned pretty quickly that in order to drive those sales, we needed to first get traffic to the site. And so we experimented with quite a few things over the first half of the year. We tried to lean more into guerrilla marketing. It wasn't until about September of 2017 that we finally figured out we need to jump off the cliff. We need to raise our ad spend and sort of put our money where our mouth is. And so that was a pretty frightening stage, putting money into ads that may or may not yield success. It could be spend that's simply wasted, but we knew we had to do it. And so we turned up our Facebook ad budgets, and we were really, really happy to see positive feedback and to see sales start flowing in. Initially, it was actually more just traffic flowing in, actually seeing customers on the site and having customers sign up for our email lists, shoot us emails with questions. Those learnings from strangers or people you don't know personally were really, really big. They really helped us get an understanding of how people were perceiving the site, how people were perceiving the product, and then with some conversation, ultimately converting and buying the watch. And so seeing strangers start to come to the site and start to purchase the product, receive the product, and then be happy with it was huge. That was pretty monumental in knowing, hey, this is going to work. But yeah, the huge learning there is things aren't necessarily going to happen organically. Whether it's ad spend, whether it's getting a big press piece, you need to get traffic to the site. You need to be getting those clicks. You need to be gathering those emails and having those conversations to learn about your customers. And that ultimately will help propel the brand forward, and it did for us. In terms of a specific moment where there was an aha moment or full satisfaction in bringing the product to life, I don't think that happened, but it was definitely very, very satisfying when we got our first production run of watches. Reagan and I were wearing the watches on a daily basis. I was actually using something that we designed and built to surf and as a timekeeping tool, and getting the watches on the wrists of friends and family. That was a pretty incredible feeling to see something that Reagan and I had worked on over a year to design and build, and see that as a physical manifestation on our friends' wrists, people actually using it as a tool to keep time. That was pretty incredible. I think that's one of the great parts of getting to work with hard goods, is you get to see the result of all of your work, all of your goals, all of your objectives in the real world, physically. And that's a pretty awesome thing. In terms of being actually, satisfied, that hasn't happened yet. Reagan and I, we have really high standards for quality. I can't say that enough. There hasn't been a batch of watches that we've produced without making changes from the past batch. It's been incredibly important that we're constantly optimizing and tweaking the cases, the colors, the gaskets, all of these little things. It's sort of a never-ending path towards perfection. I can say that our last batch or two of watches have been much closer to that point of perfection. They're something that we're really proud of. but we definitely plan to continue to strive towards perfection with our watches. We won't stop optimizing, and we won't stop trying to make them better.